Good news, everybody. Well, what's the good news? We're 100 days away from the start of the 100th BYU football season in their program history. What are the Cougars trying to avoid this year that would happen just for the second time in the past 50-ish years? We're talking about that and also getting to your guys' questions on today's show.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, your resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Appreciate all of you who we like to call everydayers right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. The motto is your team every day, and we are your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Take advantage now and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, as I mentioned in the open, is just the 100th season of BYU football is upon us. Now we're 100 days away from that, but after today, it'll be double digits, no longer triple digits, as we count down towards the 2024 BYU football season. I also alluded to in the open something that BYU is trying to avoid for just the second time in their past 50-ish years of their program history. Well, what is that? Back-to-back losing seasons. Now, most of you know that when Lavelle Edwards took over in 1972, he had just one losing season. His second season, BYU went 5-6. After that, he never had a losing season. BYU had an incredible run, really, over the past 50 years of being one of the most winning programs. I think they're the 9th most winningest program in the country over the past 50-plus years. They go back to the start of the Lavelle Edwards era, so 1972, so that'd be essentially 52 years. When you're in the top 10 of all-time wins in that span, that's a pretty incredible mark. But BYU, by virtue of their 5-7 record last year, is trying to avoid something that last happened in 2003. What is that? A back-to-back losing seasons. Remember, Gary Croton came out of the gate absolutely on fire, 12-0 start in that 2001 season, and then after that, things just never seemed to get going. 3 straight losing seasons. He is forced to essentially resign under pressure. He was going to be fired if he didn't resign, and BYU in a different direction, and Bronco Mendenhall restored BYU to prominence by making an incredible run. But Kalani Sitake has got something to do this year. And what is that? Avoid a second straight losing season. I've said it once on this podcast. I'll say it again. My goal for the BYU football program this year, it's low. It's a 6-6 record. Get to 500, get to the bowl season, and show that you can make improvement. Now, that'll only be one game improvement if BYU is 6-6 this coming fall. But if you consider on paper what the strength of schedule looks like for BYU currently, I think a 6-6 record would show market improvement for the BYU Cougars. Well, how are they going to go about that? It's probably the question you're asking. Well, they're obviously going to be banking on one of the quarterbacks in the room right now. Guys like Jake Retzloff, the incumbent, Gary Bohannon, the new addition of McKay Hillstead, or maybe a guy like Trayson Bourget ending up as the guy to be BYU's next starting quarterback. Now, obviously, there's not a lot of time in training camp to determine that, and I'm still believing right now that Jake Retzloff, until proven otherwise, will be BYU starting quarterback this season. But you have to get some solid quarterback play. The good news for the offense outside of the quarterback position, even though as critical as it is BYU's got a lot of talent on offense. They've got an insanely deep wide receiving core. Guys are going to be looking for reps in that wide receiving core that just aren't going to find them because how many guys are capable of contributing. I believe that Keanu Hill's move to tight end is going to pay dividends up the you-know-what. And I also think the offensive line is going to have a resurgent season this year and allow a guy like LJ Martin and the other BYU running backs to get back to doing what BYU's been doing. Now, that could be me just being pie in the sky and trying to blow smoke up your skirt, but that's what BYU's banking on, is essentially continuity. The guys that they held over, they did not lose a lot of bodies to the transfer portal, nor did they bring in a ton of bodies via the transfer portal. And they are banking on the guys in this program understanding what went wrong last year and improving on that and going out there and having a chip on their shoulder, or just I don't know, whatever you want to term it to be, that is going to get them over the top this season. it's cool to think about the 100th season of BYU football. They've been playing football for over a century at this point, and it's an incredibly crazy history. The first 50 years, a lot of futility. The second 50 years, a national championship, a Heisman Trophy, all kinds of different awards, Davey O'Brien Award, Sammy Baugh trophies, Doak Walker Award, Outland trophies. It's kind of funny how down the middle almost the BYU football history is split. But celebrating this 100th year for BYU 100 days from now, it can't go unrecognized by Cougar fans. I know that BYU basketball right now is kind of the hot item around Brigham Young University, but this is still a football school first and foremost. I can tell you my numbers when I talk BYU football traditionally versus BYU basketball. Football rules the day. Now, once again, right now, Kevin Young and what the BYU basketball program are doing, we'll talk more about hoops here in a moment. It's absolutely incredible. And yes, the numbers bear out that basketball is worth paying more attention to right now for myself if I'm just simply going by what you guys are interested in. But I wanted to take an opportunity today and celebrate the fact that it's been a long history for the BYU Cougars, but it's been a strong history at the same time. And I think Kalani Sitake and BYU football right now, they understand what they're up against. I think they're also pissed off. I really do think that they are pissed off about how things ended last season. I think there's a lot of Cougar fans, some of the online comments from the keyboard warriors, as it were, all across Cougar Nation have got them thinking, you know what? Bleep all y'all. We're going to go do our thing out there. And that's the mentality I think BYU football should have. Go out there and prove to all of us. I'm talking about myself, anybody else in the media, you as Cougar fans, maybe even their own coaches, administrators, and the like, I guess leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, if you want to include them in the mix there, and go prove it. It's us against the world. It's got to be the mentality for BYU football this fall. Once again, 6-6 is my mark. I think would mark success for me because I think BYU would have proven that they can hang and tread water at the Power 5 level. This was always the experiment of joining the Big 12 Conference. BYU, I think, was under no illusions, just my personal opinion on the matter, of being a Big 12 contender right away. They wanted to build slowly, make sure they built it the right way, and then eventually ascend to competing for conference championships. I believe that is still the goal. I believe that is still Kalani Sitake's MO, is he wants to build this thing the right way. Getting to a 500 record this year, I think would show that improvement, especially when you consider what I believe is a far stronger and tougher schedule this fall versus what BYU faced last year. So we'll see how it goes. And I'm excited for this. I'm a little bit of a nerd. I love history. I love looking back at things. And for those of you who are wondering where the 100-year recap for BYU football is gone, we're going to get back to that. I have plans to get back to it. So I apologize that it fell by the wayside there, but basketball kind of, like I said, took the reins and kind of steered things in a different direction, but get excited. We're 100 days away. After today, it's 99 days. It's on. We are in double digits and we are on the road to getting ready for college football. And I, for one, I am ecstatic, I'm geeked, and I am ready to let her rip. All right, coming up here in just a minute, we're going to talk some BYU basketball. You guys submitted your questions via our Locked On Cougars Insider group. Some great ones on hoops, some great ones on football as well. We'll delve into as many of those as we can momentarily right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Yahoo Finance. Now, Yahoo Finance is here for you guys, no matter where you're at in the rat race we call life. Now, all of us are trying to be smarter with our money. We're trying to save for retirement, also make sure that we're taken care of across the board. But the best part is you want to grow your portfolio without the rising cost of inflation to pay off your debt or your mortgage, pretty much anything that's standing in the way of you and financial freedom, right? Of course, all of us with Yahoo Finance, you can access that freedom, the news, the data, and the tools you need to help you reach that financial freedom you are so much looking forward to. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor, and they want to help you guys out as well. I'll admit I am a bit of a neophyte when it comes to investing. I'm learning a lot of the tricks of the trade as I go along. Yahoo Finance, I signed up for it, has actually been very nice. I can pull all of my accounts into one place, have a look at them. Also, I can get all the news I need and make decisions on whatever I need to move forward with as well. So that's great news if you're looking forward to do something like that. Also, with a community of over 90 million users each month, the Real Strength is helping you on your way to financial freedom. So take advantage today and get a comprehensive financial news and analysis from our friends over at yahoofinance.com, the brand behind every great investor. Once again, that's the number one financial destination, yahoofinance.com. One more time to remind you guys, it's yahoofinance.com. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. I want to remind you guys, if you're sick of watching Fox Sports or ESPN and having to turn on the volume with all the shouting going on those other networks, make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every single day with the biggest stories of all the screaming going on the other networks. Locked On Sports, you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube, as well as the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right. Let's talk about what you guys want to talk about. But I'm actually going to give a shout out early on in this. And this actually comes from our YouTube comments earlier this week. It actually came from yesterday's edition. And I got to say, this, I got to pull this up here and read this in its entirety. It absolutely floored me when I got this note from our good friend, Haka9. So I apologize, Haka, if that's not your actual name. He said this: "Hey, Jake, I'm an everydayer and wanted to tell you something you probably aren't expecting. So stick with me on this, folks. This is absolutely incredible. I lost hearing in my right ear about a year ago, and I recently got a cochlear implant on that side to try and restore hearing in that ear. The thing is, it sends electrical signals directly to the inner ear, so it's unlike natural hearing. You have to practice with it to be able to learn how to interpret sound again. I listen to your podcast through Bluetooth every day to practice. Your speech is really clear and consistent." Yeah, that was a nice stumble at that point, which is very helpful for me to learn how to hear again through my implant. Thanks for what you do. Well, Haka, man, that's cool. I'm glad I can be a part of you getting back to being able to hear, and pretty incredible to consider what medical technology can do for us, because the fact that you said you lost your hearing in your right ear, but having that implant in there and be able to learn how to hear, it's really cool to see that. So I wanted to give you a shout out because that was something that I did not expect. You absolutely floored me with that comment, but I hope we can continue to help you along your way to recovery on that front. All right, so on to other questions, though. Starting here, Taylor Dallin, I want to hear your best case scenario for the football team. Now, Taylor's got a great question there. The best case scenario in my mind for BYU football, once again, let me reiterate, 6-6 is my benchmark for what I think success would be for BYU football this fall. What is it going to take to be best case scenario? 8-4? Yeah, probably. I know that sounds like, man, that's a pretty low bar, Jake, for a best case scenario. But here's the deal. The Big 12 is going to be very, very talented this year. The SP Plus rankings came out from Bill Connolly from ESPN. I don't know if you guys saw this, but there are a number of Big 12 programs between 17 and 37 of those SP Plus rankings. Now, BYU checks in the 60s, so they're on the lower end of Big 12 programs. But the top end of the Big 12, it is going to be an absolute dog-eat-dog conference if those SP Plus numbers are right. If you have teams right there within 20 spots of one another, on any given night, those two programs can beat each other up. And that is why the Big 12 is going to be ultra competitive this fall. So the best case scenario for me is thinking about it. If BYU can kind of, get over the hump, yeah, it's maybe to go to 8-4, maybe at the very best 9-3. It doesn't seem like you're going to get too far with how competitive this conference is, even if BYU goes out there and surprises folks. And it's just something to pay attention to there. Now, Dave Bevan also asked this about BYU football. Dave says, with BYU football lagging so far behind in recruiting, etc., when BYU basketball seems to be getting the recruiting stuff up to snuff for the Big 12, is there time for a new coach? No. No offense, Dave, but I just don't see a ready-made replacement for a guy like Kalani Sitake out there in the football world. Maybe it is a guy like Jay Hill, but hey, that's a guy on the staff already, and Jay can do a lot of stuff inside the staff, inside the program, already being a member of that staff. But I just don't see time for a new coach for BYU football. Now, if you have back-to-back losing seasons, maybe even a third losing season in a row, well, the precedent is that you have 3 straight losing seasons. BYU football will They will ask you to move along. Now, the level of the Mountain West that Gary Croton was competing in versus the level the Big 12 is requiring of BYU football, I think Kalani Sitake may have a little longer leash than that, but at the same time, he does have already a one losing season on his record. So it's one of those interesting dynamics to pay attention to, and we'll see how things progress here. Apologies, I've got some allergies going on, so nose is running a little bit. So if my voice sounds a little wonky, it's pretty windy. If any of you paying attention to the wind out there right now. All right, other news going on, other questions for you guys. So Dave, hopefully that answers your question. Which do you think will be more improved? This comes from Jesse. The defense under Jay Hill or the O-line under TJ Woods? It's a great question, Jesse. I am going to say I'm going to believe that the defense under Jay Hill will be more improved this season, but I'm also expecting pretty marked improvement from the offensive line because Connor Pay's been on this podcast vowing that they are going to be better. So I think there'll be improvement on both sides, but I think the defense is going to take more strides this year. I just simply think they have to with Jay Hill at the controls, but obviously the offensive line could go out and prove me wrong. Let's see. Nick Chadwick, dark horse on each side of the field. Do you think we'll get to BYU to a 6-6 record? Ooh, good question here. Dark horse. Let's see. I'm going to say Pokai Haunga at running back for BYU. I think he's going to create a nice 1-2 tandem with LJ Martin in the backfield. And then on defense, I'm going to give the nod to a guy in Marcus McKenzie. Now, Marcus McKenzie, I'm hoping he's going to be healthy for training camp. He missed all of spring with a foot injury that knocked him out of the back half of last season. But any of you who saw what he did on special teams, his speed, his length, his athleticism, he looks like the next lockdown corner for BYU football, and I am hopeful that he gets to realize that this fall on the back end of BYU's defense. If he can do that, teaming up with a guy like Jaxson Robinson, they go a long way to helping BYU's front seven by having two guys who can really lock guys down on defense. I'll give the nod to those two. Also, a typical BYU football question. What's the one game BYU should win but lose? And please don't say it's Wyoming. Nick, it's Wyoming. No, I think Wyoming's an interesting one. I'm going to say the game that BYU should win that they could lose is a game like Houston. BYU could come into that Houston game in the regular season finale and be 5-6 on the season, needing to get to a sixth win. And Houston is expected to struggle this year, and they may be struggling at that point. It could feel like, hey, it's a bit of a layup. We're going to get to 6-6. You cannot afford to overlook stuff like that. So if you want a non-conference game, it's probably the Wyoming game. But if you want a conference game, it's something like that Houston game. I know that's kind of the weird thing about it, but we'll see what happens there. Let's see here. Other questions. Tyson, this is a good one, and this will help us transition to the basketball questions. What team is your dream team for non-conference football and basketball games? All right, so non-conference football. BYU's played pretty much everybody I could have dreamed of, but a team I would like to see BYU face off against is Ohio State once again. I'd love to see them take on the Buckeyes, and I'm no big Buckeye fan by any means. I'm very much on the Michigan side of things in that rivalry, but I want to see BYU take on Ohio State. They've taken on essentially every other big dog out there, seemingly in the not too distant past. I know that Penn State's one that some people might mention, but Ohio State's the one for me on football. Now on basketball, a lot of the games I want a BYU basketball to see a chance to have them play, games like playing Kansas, what's going to happen now that BYU's in the Big 12? But if you want me to pick a team in basketball that I'd like to see BYU play against, give me something like, Duke, North Carolina, one of those ACC blue blood types. I'd like to see that. Maybe go to Tobacco Road and play, the North Carolinas or the Dukes of the world once again. That's probably my dream scenario in basketball. All right, Mark Sanders says this. Just read that Jaxson Robinson was undrafted in the ESPN mock draft that was put out most recently. Your thoughts on that? I'm not surprised. I will say that. I'm not surprised that Jackson's been kind of floating around as a second-round pick, and I don't think necessarily that his combine performance essentially said, yeah, he's a draft pick. But here's the deal. I'll also add this. If Jaxson does see those and thinks that there's credence to him coming back to college, he's not coming back to BYU, folks. I just don't see that happening. I've been adamant on that since mid-season. I've been told by people who are very much in the know on this that he is going to play elsewhere. Is that Kentucky? Is that Kansas has been rumored that he's been given a seven-figure NIL deal to potentially go play for the Jayhawks? That could be the case. But he may withdraw himself from the NBA draft. but do not expect him back at BYU. And I know that might damper some of your hopes, but that's really how things look right now. Let's see. Mark also said this. I'm also interested to know if you're anything further about Chaz Lanier. I know he's still evaluating his options. The reports from 24/7 Sports say that Tennessee's in the lead. He's a native of Tennessee. We'll see what happens. But BYU hanging with Kentucky and Tennessee in a recruiting battle, I'll take that. If BYU can continue to do that, it's not a bad place to be, frankly, because BYU for a long time has not even been close to that stratosphere before. Now, there's been, let's see, David asked a question similar to this. Also had questions from like 4 or 5 of people asking questions. Greg, geez, yeah. Okay. Any news on the basketball coaches and their hiring? What's going on, Jake? I want to know what's going on. When are they going to announce this? So the thing is, I wish they would announce it right now. I've been waiting on BYU to announce it for quite some time, but we all know that BYU can be weird when it comes to their hires. I will applaud them to no end for making sure the hire of Kevin Young was done in a very quick fashion. Adding Brandon Dunson, adding Chris Burgess. They're all done in very short order. What's the holdup here? A couple of you pointed out, could they still be coaching in the NBA ranks? That is a possibility, but I have been told that at least 2 of the coaches have all but been hired. Is the ink not dry on the contracts? Are they having to go through one more round of interviews by some you-know-what in the BYU hierarchy who feels like they got to stick their finger in the pie and have their say on the matter? I hope that's not the case, because I'll be adamant that I think there's too many people that think they have to have a say on stuff that they don't at BYU in athletics, but that's another story for another day. I want them to get it done. And maybe by the time I record this podcast and put it out, the announcement's going to come on a Friday. Don't hold me to that, because I have tried to predict it 4 or 5 times now, and I have been wrong every single time I've tried to predict it. It'll happen when it happens. I know that's frustrating to hear, but I'm thinking the only one saying that BYU's got 2 coaches that they think essentially have locked down and they have ready to announce. Why not announce them? I'm just saying, it's just my thought on that. I don't get it. It's just one of those weird things I look at here. All right, a couple other questions before we go here along the way. Now, okay, so Larry College asked this. I like how BYU basketball seems to be leaving no stone unturned. I wish football would do the same. I think it's a little bit of a cheap shot at BYU football. It's nothing against you, Laramie. I think BYU football has got a little bit of a bad rap, and it's a hangover from the previous defensive staff. Remember, Elisa Tuiaki, Ed Lamb, and the guys that were underneath them, they took the path of least resistance to the nth degree in terms of recruiting. The guy essentially got a sniff of an offer from another program. People was like, oh, well, hey, we're out on that. I don't know why they wouldn't fight, but I think that the no stone unturned thing is a holdover from that era of BYU football. I can tell you that BYU football is doing their absolute darndest. Jay Hill has come in, and he has been very thorough in going about recruiting guys. I think Aaron Roderick, and I know he's a hiss and a byword these days for a lot of BYU fans, Aaron's always been a guy who is willing to look at all places of the country if he can find a prospect he deems worthy of playing for him at BYU. So I think that the whole adage of, the BYU basketball leaving no stone unturned and BYU football not doing that, I think it's a bit of a misnomer, because I think it's a holdover from a previous regime that, they did not turn any stones over because they just didn't want to do that. They didn't want to work in the recruiting sphere. And if they want to be upset about that, they can be upset about that. But they set BYU football back multiple years with their lackluster recruiting. So I'll just leave it at that. All right. I got a couple of quick words on a change in college athletics I think is just, it might be the worst decision that the NCAA and any college athletic program or athletics department could possibly make. And trust me, we're talking about a litany of those that have come up in recent months and years. This might be the worst of the bunch, and we'll talk about what that is as you roll on right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Now, FanDuel is here for you guys to have fun when it comes to the winner take all time with the NBA and NHL playoffs ongoing. FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a win of your own. If you want to have some fun this NHL or NBA playoff season, you can do that. If you want to look ahead to college football season upcoming, BYU a 4.5 over/under win total. You think BYU is going to absolutely fly past that? You know what? You can do it with our friends at FanDuel, and you can put the money down on it right now. The best part is right now, new customers, you get $150 in bonus with any winning $5 bet. Think about this. You bet on one of the playoff games or baseball game that's going on right now with a $5 bet. You win $150. I want you to pop that $150 down on an over of BYU at 4.5 wins or under, depending on which side of the fence you're sitting on. That's what you can do with that. So once again, $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and much, much more on an app that's super easy and fun to use. So you can visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to make every playoff shot count. Once again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. It's all courtesy of your friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Want to thank you guys for being with us. And if you have not joined our Locked On Cougars Insider group, I'd encourage you guys to do so right away. It's been a really, really fun interaction to have one-on-one conversations with a number of you out there. And the best part is it comes via text message. It comes to your phone via text message. It can't get much simpler than that. You don't have to go to a message board or a website and log in. You sign up, you get text messages from me. You can fire back with questions. And like we did just barely, those are the ways we're interacting with you out there. And I'm passing along insider tidbits that I'm hearing along the way every day as I go about things. So sign up today, 14-day free trial to see if it's the right option for you. Just $4.99 a month after that. Give it a shot today, my friends. Link in the show notes, whether you're watching and or listening to this one. I'd love for you guys to sign up today. All right. So there is an interesting dynamic evolving in college football and college athletics. Now, yesterday, the NCAA Board of Governors officially voted to accept the House versus NCAA plan to create that $2.7 billion fund. But also, the NCAA has officially voted, as Stuart Mandel pointed out, to allow schools to pay their athletes. He says still a lot of steps to go, but let that sink in for a moment. It's a crazy thing to consider because there's going to be 20 million, up to 20 million. Let me be very clear about this. It doesn't have to be the full 20 million, but up to $20 million will be available for revenue sharing from universities to their student athletes. It's going to create an incredible piece of the pie to spread amongst in an athletic department to the athletes themselves. But there is a storm brewing with regards to how some of these schools are going to carve out $20 million in their already cash-strapped budgets to make that happen. Well, enter private equity. Yes, apparently private equity is stepping up for this. Drew Weatherford, a former Florida State quarterback, he is apparently has met with upwards of 50 football bowl subdivision programs. So 50 FBS programs. They are the programs that BYU is among. Dozens of athletic directors, a few university presidents, even some school board members and chief financial officers. And the whole thing is, the goal is quite simple. Infuse instant cash into major college athletic departments. Now, here's the deal with private equity. Private equity is all about turning profits by slashing costs. You think you want a private equity firm coming in, let's, for example, BYU's athletic department saying, hey, we'll inject X million dollars into your program and make sure you guys have the cash on hand to do that revenue sharing for your athletes and whatever else other things you guys want to do with your athletic department. But here's the catch. Once we're invested, we have a stake and we have a say in what's going on at the university. And you want to talk about cutting costs? Private equity firms, they are no holds barred. They will slash everything as much as possible just to essentially make the profit margins that much larger and look that much better in the ledger that they're keeping. Private equity might be the single worst thing that a college athletic department could ever consider in this circumstance in my mind. I know that carving out $20 million in these budgets can be very, very difficult to find for some of these programs. I'm hopeful that BYU will be able to find that much money, and I'm assuming BYU is making plans for it. But do not, I'm going to step on my soapbox. Do not let private equity firms get in with you. Drew Weatherford is working a deal with his private equity firm, I remember the name of it is, to essentially sink their hooks into some of these college athletic departments. Are some of them going to fall prey to it and allow them to do that? Yes, but watch how quickly things die on the vine. It's Weatherford Capital. Redbird Capital Partners have combined powers and billions in cash to create what they're calling the Collegiate Athletics Solutions, a dedicated campaign and business building platform for investing capital in college athletic departments at the most transformational time in the industry. Yeah, don't do it. just what I know of private equity and letting them essentially have a say in how you operate as an athletic department. Even I'm not saying that BYU's involved in this at any level, and I sincerely hope that BYU keeps them away like the plague, because I want nothing to do with a private equity firm in college athletics. That just seems like a recipe for just ultimate failure and the death of an athletics department if things kind of go the way that most private equity firms go when they invest in industries like this. It's just, don't do this. It's just, I know that there's going to be some athletic departments that are going to essentially sign on for that. You can probably kiss them, you know what, goodbye. It just doesn't seem like a smart decision. So do not do it. And it's my little stump speech for today. And I hope that athletic directors, chief financial officers, university presidents, etc., they understand what they're getting into. And if they do decide to get into bed with private equity firms, you're getting into bed with a shark. And that's a scary, scary proposition. All right, that's going to do it for today's show. That's what I got for you guys on this Thursday. Thank you for bearing with me with my allergies going on. But nonetheless, a big thank you to all of you for your support of the podcast. As always, hope you guys are all having a fantastic Thursday whenever you hear and or watch this. And of course, a big thank you to all of you who make it your first listen of the day every single day. And thank you to all of you once again who are everydayers with us right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.